This tutorial is part of our full-stack React Django DRF channels project, DJ Chat. You can watch this tutorial and many more from our YouTube course playlist, or the whole course, including access to additional resources from our Udemy course. The Udemy course link, which provides the best price for the course, is in the video description. Right, so next up we're going to create this secondary section, the Explore Categories section here. Now you can't see the categories here because I've removed the data, but we've previously seen that this is basically going to show a list of all the categories that are available. It's going to be linked so that we can then, or the user can then select a particular category they're interested in. That would then show them all the popular channels or all the channels related to that particular category. So in this section, we'll just create this secondary section. We won't connect it to the main section here, which will actually show all these servers. We won't do that for now. We'll just go ahead and just build the component for the Explore Categories section here on the left-hand side. So this is going to be very familiar. If you have watched the previous section, we need to build a component which is going to fit inside of this secondary section here in the middle. And then we're going to need to make sure, in fact, we don't need to pass any props in here, so we're not going to need to worry about that. So let's go ahead and start building this. Now, before we start, I have the Django and React server turned on. I'm just going to close the Django server there because we do need to make a change. We will need a serializer. We will need some actual category data, and we actually haven't done that just yet. So let's just make sure that we add, well, in actual fact, we're going to create a new view in the views. We're going to need to create a new endpoint for categories so we can list out all the categories. So yeah, let's create a new endpoint. So this is the server list view set. So let's go ahead and create a category list view set. So it's going to be called category list view set, and that's going to be a view set. And then we need to define the query set equals category.objects.all. So we're just going to grab all the categories, nothing crazy here. Let's just make sure that we import that model in, the category model. So that's that in place. What we need to do now is just create the list function here, self, take in the request, and then we need a new serializer. So serializer, we're going to create a new serializer called category serializer shortly. Self.query set. So we're going to take in this query set, pass it through the serializer like we've done before, and then many is going to equal true because we're going to potentially return many categories. And then we need a return. So that's going to be response and then the serializer data. There we go. Okay, so we're going to create this new category serializer. So let's make sure we import that in. Obviously, it doesn't exist yet. And let's go over to serializers and let's build our category serializer. So we're going to call this category serializer. This is going to be serializers.model serializer. Really simple at this point. All we need to do is create a class meta and define our model. The model is going to equal category. That's the model. And then we're just going to define the fields. We're just going to use all of them. There we go. So we need to bring in category model. And there we have it. What we can also do inside of the views here is just make sure that it works well with the documentation. So we can extend a schema. I think that's right, wasn't it? Yeah. Extend schema. Actually, it's not built. It's not here, is it? What did we use before? Oh, server list docs. Okay, that's why. Probably would have made more sense using extend. Oh, actually, we're going to extend schema. Sorry. Okay, so we don't, unlike, it's just triggered, unlike this filter here where we're adding different parameters, we're not going to need to do that here with the category. So all we need to do here with the category is to tell Swagger UI the fact that we're utilizing a particular serializer, because it won't be able to recognize it by default. So we just need to add responses equals and then our category serializer. So we just need to tell Swagger UI that we're using this serializer, and then we're just going to bring in extend schema from DRF Spectacular utilities. So from DRF Spectacular .utils, let's go ahead and import extend schema. There we go. So just to reiterate what I've done there, the fact that we're using view sets, we haven't specified at the top here, which we could do the category serializer. So we're using a particular serializer right here. We need to tell Swagger UI we're doing that, and that's how we're doing it there using extend schema. When I say Swagger UI, I mean when we create the schema, it then identifies the fact that this is using the category serializer. Right, so with that in place, we can now move across. I'll just close that down. There's nothing else we need to do there. Let's move across to the SRC and then components. Right, so we're going to make a new folder here. We're going to call this secondary draw. So components inside of this folder is going to be related to the secondary draw template or sections. So inside of here, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call this explore categories. Okay. And then we can start to build the component that we need. Again, this is probably going to be around about 100 lines of code. We'll start off with the template. So I'll quickly build that and show you the template, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay, so this is our starting point for the Explore Categories component. These are all the imports. I've just added them in now. You can go ahead and actually just copy and paste many of these from the popular channels component we created earlier. In actual fact, it's pretty much all the same. So we're going to call this Explore Categories, export default, Explore Categories. Right. So we are going to be utilizing some data here from potentially the category. So we are probably going to need to think about defining an interface for that shortly. Let's go ahead first and set up the data point. Right, so here then, like we did previously, actually we can probably just copy and paste it. It saves us a little bit of time. Okay, so first we're going to set up our data point so we can access the data. Now, use CRUD server. So this is going to be called category. So we'll change that to category. And then we go ahead and create a new interface. We'll call this category. So that's going to return ID name. It's going to be slightly different, isn't it? So whatever the category returns. So let's take a look. So if we go back into our Swagger documentation and just do a refresh. There we go. We should have, well, actually, we haven't wired it up, have we? Wired it up. We haven't wired it up yet, the category. 1 second. So it's not available yet there because let's just go back. Apologies. Let's just drop that down. Go to DJ chat. We need to go to server. Remember, we've created an endpoint, and we have also, so the endpoint we created here, we created our serializer, but we didn't add it to the router. So we need to go into DJ chat, go to URLs. We just need to add it so it's actually available so we can access it. So in the URLs here, we just need to register it. And that is going to be a new endpoint. So let's set out a new router.register. So this is going to be placed at API / let's go for server / category. We don't need n/. And then we just need to connect that now to the category list view, or I think it's called category list view, view set. And then we need to bring that in. So server view set and category list view set. Okay. Looks like there's an error here, but we haven't added the comma, so make sure we add the comma there. Okay, so that should register the new endpoint. So let's make sure the server is turned on. So when we go back into our documentation, we should now have the second endpoint here. Excellent. So let's just try this out. Execute. And you can see that we only have one category at the moment. We also have an icon with that, which is all good. So we now have the endpoint we need. So that's how to access it. API server category. So that's what we're going to need next. I'm just going to copy that. Right. So back in, just drop down the URLs. Back here in the Explore categories, we just need to change this server select to server category. That's going to be the endpoint, remember? And in addition to that, we're just having a look at what data is actually being returned. So ID, name, description, and icon. So that is what is being returned, which is what we need to now set up the props for, or sorry, the interface for. So back in Explore categories, sorry for the jumping around. Let's go to ID. So that's going to be a number. We're going to have the name, which is a string. Description, which is also a string. And then the icon. Remember the icon, it's not the actual icon, the image. It's just the data, which is the link to the image. So that's just a string too. Right, so with that in place, remember, like we did previously, we want to make sure that is initialized when the component is loaded. So we need a user fetch data. Again, so I'm just going to copy and paste this from the primary, from the popular channels, the component we just built. So that's the user effect in place. Right. So that's that in place. So now we need the return. Okay, so now we need to think about the actual interface. Right. So let's create a new box. So the top section, if you remember, has a title section. I think that's what we can call it. So SX equals, so that's what we're going to build first. That's going to have a height of 50 pixels. That's what we were using, specified earlier, if you remember. 50 pixels, and then display. It's going to look very much like what we did previously, display flex. But this time, of course, we're going to be having a border at the bottom. So items center. Don't forget the comma. Okay, press save there. Okay, it's not going to do that. Align item center. Okay, so we set the PX, which means the padding on the left and right side to 2, bit of padding. Border bottom. So we're going to set the border bottom to 1 pixel. Don't forget the backticks here. Solid. And then we're going to set the actual color to the theme palette divider. Okay. Okay, so we're going to need to bring in the theme. So let's make sure we do that. Now we have already we haven't already. Okay. Use theme. Have we brought in use theme? Oh, we have. So use theme. So let's go ahead and just set that. So theme equals use theme. Okay. Cannot find name theme. Of course not. Okay. Right, so that's the theme in place. So that's a start of our box. Right, so inside of this box, well, actually, let's finish this. So border bottom, let's set the position. Now we want this to always be displayed at the top. So whenever we scroll, we want to make sure that this is still at the top. Right, so we're going to set position to sticky, which means that when we specify the fact that it shouldn't go past the top, then it's always going to be in the same place. So then we set the background color. Set the background color to theme.palette.background default. So we don't have a color. And what's going to happen if we just move back? If I can't show you, but if we were to scroll like this, what happens? Because there's no background color, then it's not displaying just yet. But it will mean that you'll still be able to see the numbers. So we want to remove the numbers. So when it is sticky, when we are scrolling, we'll see it in a second, and I'll show you this. We want to make sure we block out the numbers. So we just set the color of the background of the box. Right, so inside of here, we're going to use the word explore. Hopefully that now, maybe the server's not turned on. Okay. Okay. Oh, I haven't actually added it yet, have I? That's why it's not showing. I was confused myself then. Why it isn't being displayed? We haven't added the actual component yet to the home. Right, so that's explore, right? So there's a little bit more to do, the list. That's the next component, but let's just test this out, make sure it works, and actually add it to the home. So let's go into the pages here inside of our home. So we want to make sure we import this in. So let's go ahead and import explore categories. And we want to place this inside of our secondary drawer, remember. So let's add this in as a kind of a child component like we did with popular channels. So inside of here, that's where we're going to add explore categories. Okay, so it looks like there's a potential problem. Okay, it looks like it's expecting a prop as well. So what we can do here is to solve this problem, open equals. We can just set maybe that to false. So it's expecting that prop, which is absolutely fine. And then secondary drawer. Okay, so no property in comma with type. Okay, so we just need to go now into the secondary drawer template. So secondary drawer template, we need now to specify the fact that we're using children, or we need to specify children components. So it is a very similar process like we did with the primary drawer, except we're not passing any props this time. So it is going to be slightly different here. So up at top then, let's go ahead and create a type called secondary drawer props equals. Let's go for children. We're going to specify a React node. Okay, and now secondary drawer. So secondary drawer equals, and then we're going to specify the children, and then the type, secondary drawer props. There we go. And then all we need to do down here is remove this. Now, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to cut that because I'm going to use that in a second. And then I'm going to add children right here. Oh, there we go. And there we go. So that should now utilize. Let's get rid of typography. Doesn't look like we're using that. That should now work with our current setup. So this is the children right here. That's going to be explore category. So let's give that a go. And there we go. You can see that now in place. So let me just demonstrate the fact that that's sticky. So by adding in, if we go to explore categories here, let's just going to add in that loop there to show all the text. And you can see that those numbers are going behind this component here, which is sticky at the top. So this explore part box div component block is sticky at the top here when we scroll up and down. That's what we're looking for. If I remove the actual background color, you'll see now that you can actually see the numbers. So we actually need to specify background color in order just to make it look like it's going behind. There we go. Right, so with that in place, I'll just remove that. We don't need that now. Let's now add the loop. I'll get my brain in gear in a second. Let's now add the categories to this. So we're going to need to loop over or map over the categories. So this is going to be a list again. So let's create a list here. Slightly different list from what we created before. So we're going to set out some styling here. So we're going to set the padding top and bottom to 0 in our list. That just gets rid of any padding that we might have in the list by default at the top and the bottom to line things up nicely. If you're not too sure what it does, just remove it afterwards and take a look. Like I said, because I've pre-created this, I've already created the styles. Half the time I can't really remember why I've done it. I have to look myself, but it's worth having a look to explore why I'm doing it a bit later. So items, so we're going to need a list item. Let's create a list item. So very similar. We're going to disable padding. And then we're going to set up a key. Each item will have a separate key. So this time we're using item. Actually, I think we were before. So each item that's looped over, each category that's looped over, we're going to refer to the data through item. So items.id, we're going to get the ID of the category there again. So that's the key. We'll then set out a little bit of styling for this. So display, I'm not too sure why I need display block. You might be able to remove that, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure why that's there. And then again, it's a case of just having a look. And then dense equals true. Yeah, dense equals true, right. Okay, so looks like there's an issue somewhere. I've used a comma. Right, okay, so inside of here, we're going to have the link. So we're going to build a link like we did previously. So each category item will be linkable. So we use 2 equals backticks, and then we're going to need to create some sort of pattern for this. So explore. So we're going to need to set up this in a while, all these different links, and we will definitely do that when we get to that. So item.name. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the category name to move to different categories, and then we're going to use that name to actually query. Remember, that's in the filter. So when we filter, remember we're using the category name to filter. So we're going to be able to extract that based upon the category name that we specify in the URL to actually start to utilize our filter. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to link to Explorer and then /Explorer// and then the actual category name. Right. So with that, let's add some style. And that's going to be, again, text declaration none. We're just removing the style, the default style of the link that's being generated automatically for us. There we go. Right, so inside of our link, let's go ahead and add the list item button. So we're going to have as we probably already know, we are going to add an icon for the category. We've already specified and added that in the database. So min height 48. Just make sure that we've got a good height. So that's the list item button set. Then we can, like we did before, define the list item avatar. set the min width to 0 pixels. Just a little bit of a lining up that needs to probably be done. So that's the list item avatar. Inside of there, we're going to have an image. So we're going to specify this time an image because we're utilizing, remember, the PNG file. We're going to need to do this slightly differently. So alt equals server icon. We need to specify the src actual link for this. So backticks again. So this is going to be the media URL, which we're bringing in, remember, from configuration. And then that's going to then specify the item icon. So that's the actual link that's being passed through and stored in the database and passed down. So that's that in place. And then we can set up the style. So style equals. So now we can define, for example, the width. So I've chosen 25 pixels. You might want to change some of these settings afterwards. So height, 25 pixels. Display block. Margin. And we're going to set that to auto to try and kind of centralize it. And then there we go. Right. Let's just add a comma. So we can get that to format. No, okay. Okay. So that is the image in place. Let's just make sure that's finished properly. I think that's the problem here. There we go. Okay. So that's the image. Then we have list item avatar. Yep. List item icon. Right. So I think we're missing something here. And we've got the link. We've got list item button. We've got... Okay, so we're missing... Just move that down. Before the list item avatar, we're going to need to specify the list item like we did before the icon. Okay. Right, so this is just going to have a little bit of styling. And that's going to be the min width. Min width 0. And then justify content in the center. Happy days. Right, then we need to move this below the list item avatar. And there we go. So that's the icon setup right there. And now what we need to do is set out the text. So this is going to be the list item text. Remember, this just ends like that. So we need just the primary this time. We're not going to use secondary, I don't think, in this instance. So we can specify typography inside of here, don't forget. So we add the item name right there. That's going to be the category name, and then we can just add the variant. Spell it right this time. Variant equals body1, and then we use a text align. So we want to make sure that's aligned on the left hand side. So that's going to be start, so left hand side, and then padding. Add a bit of padding to the left. Another way of doing this, we could do it in the styling, but we can apply it directly like that. Padding left 1. Okay, so I think that's just about it. Let's take a look. Now we should already have an icon for the category. Happy days. So it looks like everything is fine. Now, I'm just going to double check something. I noticed that we maybe forgotten to change the font weight. I noticed in the preview here that the font weight is slightly bolder. Okay, so we haven't applied that to our theme. So go and navigate to the theme folder and then open up theme. Now inside of here we have we started to set out some sort of typography setting. So we set the font, but what we can also do here is start to define some of these built-in variants. So let's go for body 1. So we want to specify or an override for body 1 variant, and that's going to be the font weight. So we want to set the font weight to 500 with this particular font, and also I'm going to set the letter spacing. I want it to be a little bit smaller, so minus 0.5 pixels. So I'm just going to reduce the letter spacing as well. So we're going to need a comma there. I was expecting that to be absolutely fine. What's the problem here? So body 1. So this should be in typography. Okay. Put it in the wrong place. So that's got to be inside of typography. That's the problem there. Okay, so we just override or create an override for the body 1 built-in variant. So now when we go back into the code, it should now change to be bold like this. So you can see now it's made that change. Good, so we can make the assumption that any other categories that we add here will look very similar or be presented in this particular way. Notice that notice that we do have the capabilities of hovering over, and we can click on it. Obviously, this doesn't exist just yet, the actual link. We'll deal with that in the next tutorial. But what we have now is a functional component for both the two templates here, the main and the secondary drawer. Excellent. Right, so let's now move across to the main section. What we want to do now is router. We want to connect everything up so that when we do actually press or select a different category, we want to show all the servers related to those particular categories.